Travis Kelce utterly speechless after Taylor Swift's wedding date proposal. It was a late autumn afternoon, the golden light of the setting sun streaming through the large windows of Travis Kelce's private study in Kansas City. He had just returned from another intense practice, his body sore but his mind buzzing with thoughts of the game ahead. Yet, despite his love for football, his thoughts had recently been wandering into a very different territory, the woman who had unexpectedly stolen his heart, Taylor Swift. He still remembered the first time they met, the way her smile made his heart race and how effortlessly they had clicked. What had started as a whirlwind romance had quickly grown into something more, something profound, something that made him want to pause and savor every moment they spent together. But lately, he'd begun to wonder about the next step. Taylor had been more open than ever about her love for him, and he was certain he felt the same way. But as his fingers drummed on the edge of his desk, Travis wondered, what was she thinking? As if on cue, his phone buzzed on the corner of his desk. It was a message from Taylor, which was not unusual in itself. The two of them had a constant stream of texts, calls, and video chats, but this one was different. It was short and cryptic. "Taylor, I need to talk to you about something important. Are you free tonight? Don't make plans." Travis furrowed his brow, his curiosity piqued. He had learned that when Taylor said something was important, it was important. His mind raced through 1,000 possibilities. Had something happened? Was it work-related? Was she planning a surprise? Was this the moment he had been waiting for, the moment they discussed their future? Determined not to let his nerves get the best of him, Travis sent a quick reply. "Travis, of course. I'll clear my schedule. See you tonight." Within minutes, he was pacing, his mind unable to focus on anything other than the upcoming conversation. Could this be it? Was she going to suggest something monumental? Or maybe she wanted to take a step back. The uncertainty was both exciting and terrifying. By the time the sun had dipped below the horizon, Taylor's black SUV pulled into the driveway. Travis was already standing by the door, anxiously awaiting her arrival. As she stepped out of the car, her familiar smile made his heart race, but it was tempered by a sense of dread he couldn't shake. "Hey," she greeted him softly, walking up the steps to where he stood. She leaned in and kissed him on the cheek, the warmth of her touch immediately easing some of the tension in his shoulders. "Hey, Tay," he replied, his voice betraying his nerves. "You okay? What's going on?" Taylor's eyes sparkled, but there was a strange intensity behind them that Travis had never seen before. She took his hand and guided him toward the living room, where a cozy fire crackled in the hearth. "Travis," she began, taking a seat on the couch, "I've been thinking about something for a while now, and I think it's time I told you." Travis sat beside her, his mind racing. He could feel his pulse quicken. "What's up?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She took a deep breath, her hands clasped tightly together. There was something in the air, an unspoken heaviness that felt as though it might change everything. "You know how much I love you, right?" Taylor started, her voice soft but steady. "And you know how much I want to build a future with you." "Of course," Travis replied, his voice steady, though inside his heart was hammering. This felt like a moment of reckoning. She nodded, taking another breath before continuing. "Well, I've been thinking a lot about what that future looks like. And I don't just mean the two of us, what it means for our families, our friends, and our lives together." She paused, her gaze never leaving his. "So, I've decided it's time to take the next step." Travis's brow furrowed as he tried to process what she was saying. He could see where this was going, but his mind refused to fully accept it. Taylor had always been upfront, but this felt different. She reached for something from the side table and placed it in his hand. He looked down and saw a small, beautifully crafted box. Before he could speak, Taylor continued, her voice growing more emotional. "Travis, I'm not asking for anything today. I'm just asking for something that means more than anything else in the world to me. I want to be with you forever. But I need to know if you feel the same way." With trembling hands, Travis opened the box. Inside was a small, but stunning, silver pendant, a heart intertwined with two interlocking rings. On the back was a tiny inscription, "I choose you, forever." He blinked in shock, completely stunned by the gesture. His mouth went dry as he tried to piece together what was happening. Taylor reached over and gently touched his arm. "I've been thinking," she said softly, her voice barely a whisper, "about the date. The day we make it official. Not just with our families, but with the world. I want you to help me choose that day. So we can mark it together. Our wedding date." Travis sat there, utterly speechless. His eyes darted between the pendant and Taylor, his mind struggling to comprehend the enormity of what she was asking. A wedding date? She wasn't just talking about being together, she was talking about forever. And she wanted him to choose the day. His heart raced as emotions crashed over him like a tidal wave, excitement, joy, disbelief, and an overwhelming sense of love. He looked at her, completely at a loss for words, his mind working in overdrive. You're serious?" he finally managed to whisper, his voice a mixture of awe and wonder. You want me to choose a date for our wedding?" Taylor smiled, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Yes, Travis. I can't imagine spending my life with anyone else. I want this to be a day we'll both remember forever. But I need your input. This is our day, our future, our love. You've been such an incredible part of my life already, and I want you to help me decide when that happens." Travis, still reeling, held the pendant in his hand, his mind slowly piecing together the reality of the situation. Taylor Swift, the woman who had captivated millions with her music, her charm, and her heart, was asking him to choose their wedding date. The weight of the decision hit him like a ton of bricks, and for the first time in a long while, Travis was speechless. Not because he didn't know what to say, but because the words simply couldn't capture the depth of what he was feeling. His gaze met hers, and for a moment, there was nothing but silence between them. It was a silence that felt both sacred and profound. Finally, he exhaled deeply, his voice barely a whisper. I don't even know where to start," he confessed, his eyes full of wonder. "But I know one thing, I am so in love with you. And I want this. I want this more than anything." Taylor's smile widened, and she pulled him into a tight embrace, her arms wrapping around him as if to hold him in place, as if to ground them both in the reality of what they were about to build together. Travis, still a little dazed, held her just as tightly, knowing that this moment would be etched in his heart forever. The words she had spoken to him, the proposal for their wedding date, had left him utterly speechless. But deep down, Travis knew that no matter what date they chose, this was just the beginning of something extraordinary, something that would last a lifetime. And he couldn't wait to make that day a reality. As the fire crackled softly in the background, Taylor rested her head on his chest, her voice barely audible as she whispered, "We'll figure out the details together. But for now, just know that I'm yours, forever." And in that moment, Travis Kelce knew, without a doubt, that he had found his forever too. Travis Kelce utterly speechless after Taylor Swift's wedding date proposal. Travis Kelce had seen a lot of things in his life. He'd caught touchdown passes in front of thousands of screaming fans, played in the biggest games of his career, and even danced his way into millions of hearts with his charisma. But never, in all his years of being a professional athlete and a public figure, had he been rendered completely speechless. It all started on a quiet evening in early spring. The Kansas City Chiefs had just wrapped up a particularly grueling season, and Travis, though still basking in the glow of another Super Bowl win, found himself in an entirely different kind of game, love. His whirlwind romance with Taylor Swift had been the subject of much attention ever since they were first spotted together. It was a storybook romance that seemed too perfect to be true, the football star and the pop princess, both at the height of their careers, drawn to each other like magnets. They had become inseparable over the past few months, spending time in quiet corners of the world, away from prying eyes. Yet, even in their secluded bubble, there was something undeniable about the way they fit together. For all her fame and fortune, Taylor was genuine, kind-hearted, and fiercely loyal, and Travis? Well, he had a way of making everything feel light-hearted and fun, even when the world was heavy. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the couple found themselves sitting on the back patio of Taylor's Nashville home. The space was warm and inviting, with soft fairy lights strung around the trees and a fire pit crackling in the center. Travis, still dressed in his chief's hoodie, leaned back in a cushioned chair, a glass of whiskey in his hand. Taylor sat beside him, her feet tucked under her, wearing a soft sweater and jeans. The air was filled with the smell of fresh grass, and the gentle hum of crickets in the distance. "I've been thinking," Taylor said softly, her eyes reflecting the flickering flames from the fire. Travis looked over at her, intrigued. "About what?" "About us," she replied, a gentle smile playing on her lips. "About what comes next." He tilted his head, taking another sip from his glass. "I mean, we're in a pretty good spot right now, aren't we?" "We are," she agreed. "But I want more. I want to make plans, to think about the future, to make it real." Travis couldn't help but feel a flutter in his chest. The idea of a future with Taylor was something he had thought about more than once, but hearing her speak of it so openly made it seem all the more real. "What kind of plans are we talking about here?" he asked, his voice dipping into a playful tone. Taylor shifted slightly, her fingers brushing against his. "Well, I think it's time for us to take the next step. And I'm not talking about moving in together or anything like that." She paused, looking deep into his eyes, her gaze intense yet loving. "I'm talking about a wedding date." Travis froze. He blinked, unsure if he'd heard her correctly. Taylor Swift had just casually dropped the idea of setting a wedding date. For them. "Wait, what?" he said, trying to make sure he wasn't imagining things. "A wedding date? Like, for real?" She laughed softly, her eyes sparkling with excitement.